I'm going to reiterate something very important. If you didn't know who fired the firearm on the set of Rust, most of you wouldn't be commenting on how obvious a certain outcome must be or a certain assumption would be. If Donald Trump was involved in a movie and was on a scene and someone got hit by a car because he was a buffoon, or because the engine or the brakes or whatever were screwed, or because someone wasn't supposed to be where they were, you know that a certain side would immediately blame it on him and ignore that it's a movie set and he shouldn't have been able to hit anybody. Period, full stop. Alec Baldwin is hated by a specific part of the population in this country because he insulted the living crap out of the then President of the United States, Donald Trump, for many, many years. Ignoring that is something that people will do. I assume that people aren't just blinded to this, that they will defiantly wave it in my face and then deny it. Some people, however, come by with some basic assertions to make. They're not opinions, they are testable assertions. Let's talk about what an executive producer is. I'm not saying Alec Baldwin was an executive producer on the show. It doesn't matter, because I'm going to read the definition. An executive producer, EP, have varying levels of involvement, responsibility, and power in a movie. It depends on the project. Some are involved in name only. They just want their name put on it, usually because they're investors. Others secure funds or act as a name recognition to attract it. This is something you'd have to literally lie to yourself about being able to check. Some are involved in the film process. Some may be concerned with management, accounting, copyrights and royalties, and other legal issues. The Indeed profile for an executive producer is based on small productions, not real movies, not full ones. And also I should point out that indie producers and executive producers, I'm listed as an executive producer in technically a movie. It's only seen in Japan, literally, because it was immediately made as a really poor Americanized version of a Kung Fu style movie, only it was a sci-fi horror movie with zombies, but don't get me started on that. And I'm listed as an executive producer simply because I helped fix things. I didn't do anything other than repair shit. It's name only. An executive producer definition, according to many business sites, supervises the entire production and or is responsible for coming up with a concept, writing a script, setting a budget expectation, assuring production quality on the film set, introducing new ideas and concepts that might align with the project's brand initiatives. Sounds like an executive trying to be a producer. Ensuring production projects intended brand image meets competitive goals. This is when the typing up of the page actually got off the rails. Overseeing and approving the hiring of marquee talent, meaning the starring talent. Why would you use such a special word instead of the name recognized talent? Maintaining the budget, approving schedules. Now this is sounding like secretary work. Supervising other producers, which is what an executive producer's definition is supposed to be, is listed nearly last. And also listed at the ass end of this, tacked on because executive producers existed before regulations on whether or not a horse could be shot on camera. Making sure the production team is working within union regulations is literally listed last, but is not listed as an activity that an executive producer is supposed to meddle with. Now let me explain what the producer on whatever, I'm in Oregon, I have a different experience. His job as a producer was to produce the show, the movie, the cartoon, the animation, and was a jack of all trades, and was not touching a gun. Executive producer was not allowed to be the firearms expert or to approve of anything. The director can give commands on set, is traditional. A producer is not allowed to tell you anything if you're doing a proper set. That's my assertion, not anybody else's maybe. Someone commenting on my channel when I was the one who decided whether or not you were trained enough to be on set with fake guns. Also other people saying it's cheaper to use a real gun than it is to use a dummy gun. Not on a major motion picture. Because people will subsidize making sure there's no live firearm on set. meaning a gun that cannot fire any cartridge. It can be made for 6-in-1 cartridges, which you can't put a bullet in because they have a shredder in them, or 100 other things. It is not easier to convert a real gun. It is easier for you and I. I've done this. But I also put in shredder pins and made a very good job of it, by the way. You hide the pins on the underside of the barrel. That nobody looks under the barrel. If you look at every movie right now, you can't unsee how many pins you see in the barrel. And various other things, including seeing someone load a very big cartridge, but it has a really small opening where the chamber is so that it cannot fire a bullet. It could fire a projectile, but it can't fire the bullet if you put in the right cartridge. Making the chamber and bullet diameters not match is one of the easiest ways to do it. Size matters. And I want to point out, someone made a statement here about my assertion that maybe the firearm became faulty or was faulty. It was a Pieta 45 long Colt, was the assertion by some websites. We still don't have exact information on this. And depending on what year it was put out and whether or not it was trying to faithfully emulate a gun with one or another feature added or missing, we don't know how it works. But I'll tell you again and again and again, if it's a single action especially, it has this surface where the hammer that goes forward to set off a cartridge is resting against something stopping it. And that something is pulled out of the way by you pulling the trigger, which causes a teeter-totter reaction and moves that out of the way. And I described it as being a catch point that can wear out. And I also cited a little listing of a video you can look up where a gun is missing that notch. The notch is worn down. Under very specific conditions, which can happen at any time, it suddenly doesn't have the ability to latch the hammer back, which is a gigantic no-no that nobody competent would leave in a gun. That means the gun, in that case, it being a Thompson Center, one of my favorite firearms, because of the simplicity and lack of failure, a single-action weapon, that thing had a defect in it. There's no reason to assume any other firearm that uses an almost identical mechanism couldn't have the same thing. Aside from it rotating the cylinder, which is a major engineering deal, by the way. If you don't know how to do that, go find out how much a pain in the ass it is to get it to rotate a cylinder without you having to juggle some engineering problems. This Pieta 45 could very likely have had a worn-out surface. Now, someone said something to the effect of this, and yes, I'm priming you. If a firearm was faulty on its last use, why wasn't this detected before the fault manifested itself on its last use? I looked everywhere, and guess where I found it? The last place I looked is where I found it. That's because you stopped looking. That has nothing to do with the last place you would look, meaning you're frustrated that it was the last place you looked, is where you found your car keys. It means you didn't keep looking after you found your car keys and find it maybe somewhere else, because that's crazy talk. So why would it be faulty and have this incident because the fault manifests itself and then you stop using it? And again, no one's taken the damn gun apart to find out if it's faulty. No one. There hasn't been a report of anybody taking the gun apart. That is incredibly bad. The police department and the film crew and everybody else should be screaming, why didn't someone take the gun apart? It's not that difficult. And why aren't they telling us exactly which version of the Pieta firearm? Another statement is, why would they use it for live fire training if it was faulty? Or you could say the live fire training may have caused it to become faulty because it wasn't a durable firearm. If you look up Pieta firearms, specifically muzzle loaders, they're notorious for being really, really cheap, and they're a project gun. You start off with it, and you end up filing down all the rough edges, or making rough edges on that sear, because sometimes they're sold with a default unfinished part set. We're at the 9-minute and 20-second mark, so I'll just give you this information. I've had possession of one of these things, and it said right on the box, please take this to a gunsmith. This is not considered a completed firearm, because it doesn't have to be, because it was a muzzle loader, or more accurately, cap and ball. And it's easy to take a cap and ball and convert it into a low-power large bore like a 45 Colt. Nobody's commented on whether or not it's a conversion cylinder. Guess how you make a movie set safe gun out of an unsafe one if it's a revolver? You take out the cylinder and put in the one that can't fire real cartridges. It's considered bare minimum standard. You just make sure that cylinder isn't available. But if someone put that cylinder back in for live fire, oh yeah, that would explain why this happened. Because guess which one would have more wear and tear on it as well? Did it occur to you that this was a black powder weapon bought really cheap because that's the easiest way to make a converted weapon? You just have to have an FFL or an SOT, and you say, I'm taking the black powder weapon, I'm going to put the conversion cylinder in it, which doesn't require any real legal restrictions for you and me, but for somebody who's an armorer, it is. And you say, I'm guaranteeing this gun because I'm testing it. But that means you have a conversion cylinder on set that can be put into a gun that hasn't been double-checked by taking it apart and making dead-ass sure it has a real steel set of surfaces that have been milled perfectly. Because they have to be perfect, because you don't want to have to take it apart every 2 years. Because you have to take it apart every year to confirm it, unless you have it milled by a firearms expert? No. It has to be a listed, registered, and bonded gunsmith, and he has to put his name on the work. Or you just convert cap guns, which is the other way of doing it, and just make them look gussied up. They can't chamber shit. And the other one is, you make it to where it has a loading gate on the side? It does. You can't pull the cylinder. Yes, you fucking can. A gun can be taken apart because it had to be assembled sometime. No, they don't pop rivet it. And again, I'm going to repeat this. The person or persons making these comments have not acknowledged that, yes, because Alec Baldwin was on the set, politics is going to come in because he pissed off a politician who is notorious for having an enthralled gang behind him witch hunt people for even saying they don't like Trump. Okay? So let's go on here. Yes, this is perfectly plausible. Totally cromulent explanation, but here we go. A few additional things to take on this. Baldwin was the executive producer on Rust, and therefore in charge of how things were operated on set. He's playing the I was just an actor routine. That's not the case. Counterpoint. You're literally, utterly wrong about that. Especially with Alec Baldwin being a name brand for a movie. He's done this before. This is dumb. No, I'm just saying you're wrong. I'm not even discussing it any further. The same day of the incident, staff quit because of unsafe working conditions, and there was a negligent discharge days earlier. Yes, that's not Alec Baldwin's fault. And again, he may have been name only and just an actor, a name to recognize. The only reason anybody knew about this damn thing was he was on the set. Are you going to make the guy who played Venom responsible for any incident involving someone getting a cut finger? Yes or no? This particular firearm and others were being used for live training. That would be illegal and against the rules, and that's not Alec Baldwin. Again, why did you bring this up? If it was indeed faulty, why wasn't this detected before it became faulty? Because it hadn't become faulty yet. I've already pointed that out, but I wanted to emphasize it and cram it into everybody's head. After it fails, they're going to use it some more? Again, they haven't taken it apart yet. If it's faulty, why were they using it for live fire training? Because maybe the live fire training did this to them, because originally it may have been converted to 6-in-1 blank only, and they changed out the cylinder, which involves taking apart part of it. It's not very complicated, but it can actually be involved in, crap getting in to where the sear doesn't make. The other thing that can happen besides wear and tear is dirt. Do you know how to completely seal a firearm? I do. I've had to do it after an accident. It's also not the responsibility for the law enforcement to rush out and declare your favorite Trump-hating celebrity an innocent of all charges. You're presumed innocent in the United States. My country. Get out of my country. If it can be heavily assumed that the shooting was a result of negligent discharge, okay, or a malfunctioning firearm, yes, and it's equally so. We don't know which until they finish giving up the information, which I'm sure they won't at this point. Still doesn't mean Baldwin doesn't carry liability for what happened. He does. But you keep pointing out that he was an executive producer. I don't think that wording means what you think it means. It doesn't meet the definitions, and you're just wrong. And you can look up everything he's been executive producer on and ask, did he have anything to do with it? Every actor wants to be the producer or the director or the writer. Most of them can't do it. Alec Baldwin is not that great of a writer. See how many things he's actually entirely authored, then come back and talk to me. No, he's not a firearms expert. You can't claim he's anti-gun and that he's somehow a firearms expert that should be taking responsibility. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.